I'm Heather Cope in Dr. Atala's Anatomy and Physiology class. This is week 5. I will be showing the dissection of the fetal pig on the respiratory system. Okay, so for the materials that you need, I have my fetal pig and I have my dissection kit. I've put a surgical blade onto the handle and I will use scissors and my cotton pliers. So he's already cut open. I'm just gonna make another incision along his collarbone because I need to open up his chest more. And you want to make flaps down his top of the abdomen to open up the thoracic cavity. And pull this tissue away so you can get to the larynx. So under here is going to be his larynx. And his thyroid cartilage. Okay, so the first thing you want to look for is his larynx or his voice box. His larynx is going to come here from the pharynx up top, and down here you can see the tissue right in here. This connects the pharynx with the trachea, and it has 9 pieces of cartilage in the walls. The epiglottis is also located in here, and this is where the vocal cords are. The vocal cords work by vibrating to set out sound waves, and the greater the pressure of vibration, the louder the sound comes from. Next thing you want to find is the trachea. This is the trachea right here. This is what leads into the bronchi of the lungs. This is also known as your windpipe. There are C rings of cartilage in the trachea, which the trachea is also anterior to the esophagus, and it extends from the cricoid cartilage of the larynx to the 5th thoracic vertebra. This then would divide into the left and right lungs of the pig. So as it's here, let's see, let me pull this back. Right here is where the air would go. You go down here and the air would lead into the lungs. It asks you to view the type of tissue that is here. It asks you to view the type of tissue that is in this airway right here, in your trachea. It's epithelium that is pseudostratified. It's ciliated columnar cells with goblet cells and basal cells. There's also smooth tissue, which helps the cilia to move, and elastic connective tissue of the trachea. It also has horizontal incomplete rings of hyaline cartilage. They make a C around this in here. If we could take a piece of this tissue and put it under a microscope, you could see the cartilage. Okay. Also in here, when this is connected, this would be your thyroid cartilage, which is the largest piece of cartilage in the body, also known as your Adam's apple. Okay, so now we're gonna observe the lungs of him. Now note that this is a fetal pig, so the lungs aren't inflated because he was getting his air and oxygen through the umbilical cord of his mom. And in a pig versus a human, there will be 6 lobes. I'm gonna take the heart out. It says to take the heart out if you can, so you can get a better view of the bronchi. You can see his pulmonary and aortic veins right there. Okay, so here we've opened up the lungs. From here you can see this would be bringing in deoxygenated blood to the heart, which would then pump out through the pulmonary artery to go into the lungs. From the lungs, they would put oxygen onto the blood cells and then send them back in through the pulmonary veins. That would be the red. You see these red dots? That's where the veins are coming out of the lungs to provide oxygen to the body. In the lungs is called a helium. It's in the medial border. It would be in here. And then the lungs, when looking at them, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lobes, 3 on each side. In a human, it would be 3 and 2, depending on the side of the lungs, because the heart sits in this cavity. When looking at the cavities of the lungs, you have the pleural cavity, which is in between the parietal and the visceral. So if I cut this lung, you can't see much tissue because we don't have a microscope in order to see the cavities of this. But the innermost layer would be your visceral, and the outermost would be the parietal. This would all be along the wall of the heart, of the lungs right here. You can see the tissue is a little lighter than the inside. This has the pleural cavity, which helps to lubricate in between the 2 layers so that it prevents friction while you're breathing. This down here would be the diaphragm, which never inflated or was working because, again, it was a fetal pig. He never came to life. So then also what you want to look at are the bronchi. Now I'm going to try and pull this tissue apart, and you can see this lighter, maybe you can, there's lighter tissue right here. This would be your bronchi, which cuts into primary. Maybe down here you can see it. Sorry, there's so much fluid. So here you can see the little branches. The primary is right here, the first one that breaks out. And then the second would be this piece that goes straight down. And from there would branch off the third, and then the alveolar sacs where the oxygen exchange happens. And one thing I learned when I was researching about the lungs and in a fetus, one way if a baby were to die and they tried to research if the baby was dead in the womb or if the baby died after birth, they would look at the lungs to see if they were inflated and if the alveoli had fully developed to participate in oxygen exchange. So this is the basics of the respiratory system of the pig, and I will answer my post-lab questions after this.